Greetings, fellow dickheads. Today I'm once again answering the question that no one asked: can you beat Sonic 2 without collecting a single ring and without defeating an enemy? And now the rules to said challenge. This story begins in off-brand Green Hill Zone, the easiest level in the game. All you have to do is fly. Act 2 is very similar. Now the boss is very depressing, honestly. What were you trying to accomplish, Eggman? Were you trying to kill Tails, or were you trying to go on a fossil excavation? If you were trying to turn Tails into a fossil, then this isn't it. This is what the fight could have been. Eggman using the terrain to his advantage, using half of his 300 IQ. Far better than whatever the fuck we got, but it is what it is, man. Sega just makes Eggman into a retard when he's like an all-knowing genius or some shit. It's just very sad, the neglect of your characters. The entirety of Chemical Plant is unbeatable. Every route I take leads me to an unavoidable loop, and as mentioned earlier, I will not be using debug mode because it's just a cheap way to win. Kinda like cheating, but not really. Aquatic Run is where the heat started to pick up. This one grounder from AOSTH messed me up a few times, and these leaves were very helpful for hiding rings. I went underwater for the second time, or first. I don't know if this strawberry lemonade piss concoction counts as water. I swam a lot while chompers were trying to eat me alive. Obstacles were plentiful here. Hawkeye misses for the first time. I get to this ramp spring and fly to the goal. In Act 2, I took the aquatic route and it went very well, so I took the high route, and these vicious fireflies made this unnecessarily hard. And all they do is follow you, and sometimes when they're feeling generous enough, they give you 3 lives, but despite all the abuse these fucking fireflies put me through, it wasn't enough to stop me from reaching Eggman. This fight had some merit to it, but not enough to defeat Tails. Casino Night Zone, the place where you could become as rich as Mansa Musa or lose everything and be forced to go to North Korea to escape their newly formed debt. In the entirety of the first act, there was only one enemy. This guy, this Star Knight. Despite the shortage of enemies though, Act 1 compensated with an abundance of rings and slot machines. But unlike No Nut November, I had the strength to fight my gambling addiction and breeze through the act. Act 2 starts off with a seemingly unavoidable loop, but thankfully, I was able to fly up here and skip a little bit of the level. Sadly, this victory was short-lived since I reached 2 unavoidable loops here, and if that wasn't enough, there's one final loop near the boss arena, which in turn makes this part of Las Vegas from Goodwill unbeatable. Colorado, a place with very cool rocks. We start with Act 1 being unbeatable. 2 loops prevent me from reaching the goal. For the second act, after some exploration, I take the lower route with the tunnel, narrowly avoiding rings. And just a side note, the lava looks really weird. Like compared to Sonic 1, Sonic 2's lava texture looks very bad, you know. Not very good, but you know, whatever. Moving on. The rest of the act was easy due to Tails' ability to fly, and killing Eggman was even easier. I love caves. They remind me of Minecraft, and this place is no exception. I took my time here, but I still managed to die and fail, mostly because of stupidity, but also because these ninja snakes were using the element of surprise to catch its next meal. After a lot of getting used to, I get to these reverse crushers and finish Act 1. Act 2 was difficult to say the most. It had 4 close calls, one in the beginning, one where you open the bridge, one here, and another with the ramp springs. But that's not what made this act difficult. It was the boss. I must admit, I like the asparagus energy that Eggman is giving out, which I wish he had more of in other fights, but he took my joke about turning me into a fossil a little too seriously. It was so bad, in fact, I wanted to go to Hidden Palace and cheese the boss there, but to my disappointment, that wasn't possible. So I had to man up and adapt. After an hour, I finally beat the boss. The only reason why I like this stage is because of this Arabic masterpiece from Sonic Mania, which will be in the link in the description. I had the ingenious idea of drowning myself in oil to swim under the level. Theoretically, you could pretty much skip the entire stage, but since I'm the most impatient man ever, I ditched that idea in 2 minutes, leaving me to complete this act legitimately like a loser, with the added punishment of dealing with these air horses. They were the fireflies of ooze, with the added bonus of firing mini cannonballs. They're everywhere and are annoying, especially here. Other than that, this act was really short. Act 2 was pretty straightforward. I avoid all the badniks and rings, take the high route. Air horses are everywhere here too, but they're not as annoying. I find and take this one up. Shortly after, I take the highest route, slide down, and beat Eggman. We commenced Metropolis Zone with Act 1 being unbeatable, so I was doing my regular shit, right? Avoiding starmen, masterfully flying between wall jump springs, and witnessing horrendous acts. Until I get to this half loop. No matter what route I take, I am doomed to meet with this unavoidable space, which is a great way to start this stage. In the second act, literally 8 seconds in and it's already unbeatable. Level design forces me to use this pipe, which wouldn't be a problem if I had some form of platform to be able to jump off to fly, but there isn't, so I'm forced to collect rings here. Now for the $1,000,000 question, is Act 3 beatable? Yes, it is, thankfully. I would have punched the wall if it wasn't. Now, it was a challenge though. Starmen were placed in the worst places imaginable. Same goes for grasshoppers, but even then I found a way to succeed. Somewhere near the end there were supposed to be 2 grasshoppers here, but for some reason the second one decides to exist only after I get on the nut. And there's a grasshopper here too, but thankfully it didn't have any boomerang swords. There are 3 final starmen who fail miserably to kill me. Eggman fails as well once I learn how to time my attacks. I was for some reason very worried to play this level, more worried than for Metropolis since enemies were going to be abundant and hard to avoid, especially these cactus helicopters, and ring placement was also going to play a big part into making this level more difficult. In summary, this is what it would have felt like trying to dodge everything, but luckily I found an exploit where you jump off the screen like this, allowing me to avoid everything on screen. This exploit made this level so easy in fact that I'm pretty sure you're able to beat it as Sonic. Me finding this exploit was the equivalent of Prometheus giving fire to man. Wing Fortress, the place where you always forget where to go. We start off with Sonic sacrificing himself, so let's have a moment of silence. So I steer clear of these nicely placed rings and miraculously land on the edge of this turbine and take a small shortcut. I go slow here to avoid rings and enemies. I forget which way to go, so I fly and get to the boss. This fight is usually a pain in the ass for me, and those 3 rings weren't going to help, but thankfully I was able to defeat the boss easily in a corner. Eggman comes close to escaping, but somehow Sonic was able to install a rocket booster, which I find surprising since it's literal rocket science. And like that, we get to the Death Star. So you're kinda supposed to beat Death Star Zone without rings, but I'ma narrate it anyways, so I was able to beat Silver Sonic in 17 seconds. My best time is 13 seconds. I mean, what can I say? I'm a professional speedrunner. After that, I fight the second most depressing final boss, the Egg Destroyer Battlesuit. Just let me show you the fight. Aside from the kick-ass music that District of Columbia Construct made, this fight is very boring and repetitive. He wasn't even trying to kill Tails. He should have used bombs while he was in the air or when he was walking. I don't know, something to make this boss more climactic, more epic and all that good stuff. But, you know, at least it's not as bad as the first boss. With this video being close to conclusion, is this challenge beatable? No, sadly. So, yeah. Roll the credits.